The United Nations UN General Assembly is holding a rare emergency session to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I want to bring in Aaron Katersky, who's in Lviv, Ukraine, for us, as well as Elizabeth Schulze, who's in D.C. The UK Defense Ministry says Ukrainian forces have slowed the progress of Russian forces as they march toward Ukraine. And so, Aaron, I'd like to start with you with the latest on the fighting there before, Elizabeth, we get to what's being discussed at the U.S. General Assembly. So, Aaron, what is the latest?
Well, it was a bit of a quieter day in Kyiv, but we've, in recent hours, been getting some reports of some fairly serious fighting in Kharkiv, which is the second largest city. It's in the eastern part of the country. Pictures, social media images all coming in to show some fairly significant bombardment and a heavy amount of civilian casualties. The Ukrainians at the start of the day said more than 350 civilians had already been killed, including more than a dozen children. That number has almost certainly increased today, and there was some report of heavy fighting too on the outskirts of Kyiv, where Russian forces are still believed to be 15-20 miles away, but coming. Even as the Ukrainians in recent days have slowed the Russian advance, the thinking is the Russians are taking their time to resupply, to reinforce, and perhaps, as President Zelensky has warned here, some critical hours coming.
And Elizabeth, we've been monitoring that UN General Assembly emergency session. We heard from the representative of Ukraine calling on the UN to join, to rally behind Ukraine against Russia and condemn these actions. And now the Russian representative echoing statements that we've heard from Russia leading up to this, accusing the Ukrainian government, or at least in areas of the Donbas region, of genocide and other atrocities, and essentially saying that this action is justified. So what stands out to you so far from what's been said?
Diana, starkly different messages from these two ambassadors to the UN. We first heard from the Ukrainian ambassador essentially making this plea to the international community to understand what the people of Ukraine are going through, calling on the global community to rally its support in condemning Russia for this invasion, saying innocent people are dying, that really this is a complete breach of international norms going back for decades, and making comparisons to World War II, saying that we cannot just stand by and watch as this happened. Then we heard from the ambassador from Russia, who was on a completely separate page, repeating a lot of what we've heard from Russian state media, that this attack was not provoked, that they were defending their own territories and those separatist territories, that they are responding because this is what the Ukrainian people want, which of course is the opposite message that President Zelensky has been making, and really making the point of saying that, you know, the UN is trying to delegitimize this whole kind of effort that Russia is undergoing. Ultimately here, it's very clear that the UN is trying to make a point that the majority of countries are standing by Ukraine, ready to provide additional humanitarian aid, potentially military aid, as they watch this unfold on the ground in Ukraine and also in the neighboring countries with the refugees that are flowing in from Ukraine too.
And Aaron, while this is all happening, Ukrainian delegates are also holding talks with Russian negotiators. So what's the latest on that?
Yeah, these have been going on for several hours now, Diane. It seemed like there was a bit of a pause and maybe another round getting underway. Ukrainian President Zelensky didn't have a lot of hope that these talks would lead to anything, especially with more Russian personnel and artillery pieces coming toward this country. And as Vladimir Putin's talking about putting nuclear assets on tactical alert, doesn't seem like the groundwork for any kind of a ceasefire, but that's what Ukraine has been asking for. And meantime, the Russians want Ukraine to sign a pledge that they'll never join NATO. So we're not sure how far apart the two sides are, or whether anything can be worked out, or whether this is just an effort to simply buy time for Russian resupply. A couple of things have been happening here, though. In Kyiv, the curfew, the nightly curfew, is going to start a little bit earlier. They want people indoors. And the citizen soldiers have continued to mobilize here. They've been stitching together camouflage netting. They've been filling empty beer bottles for Molotov cocktails, conducting neighborhood watch after it gets dark. There's a good deal of fear about Russian saboteurs coming into different parts of the country, and they want to know who's where, any suspicious characters in their own neighborhoods. So ordinary citizens have been taking up this fight, even as many more citizens try to get out. We spent more time today at Lviv Central Railway Station, and already what, 500,000 people from Ukraine have moved to an international border, and there are hundreds of thousands of more on the move trying to flee the fighting.
All right, Aaron Katursky in Lviv, Elizabeth Shelsey for us in D.C. Thank you both. And so far, Ukraine has been able to slow Russia's advance toward Kyiv, but we've also seen those satellite images of a massive Russian military convoy heading toward the capital. ABC News contributor and former commander of U.S. forces in Korea, retired General Robert Abrams, joins us now with more on the military developments here. And, General, what is the biggest concern as Russia tries to surround the capital city?
Well, Diane, good morning. I think the biggest concern for the Ukrainians is if Russia is able to, as one of their previous correspondents mentioned, to resupply, gather up their forces, recompose themselves, and then conduct a deliberate operation to encircle and then to penetrate into the capital city. That would be my biggest concern. So I think where the Ukrainian defense forces and the local citizens are being so successful is conducting limited attacks against these convoys when they're most vulnerable, which will completely disrupt the Russian momentum and their ability to synchronize their attack.
Now, France says that Russian President Vladimir Putin told French President Emmanuel Macron that he'll stop strikes against civilian targets, which is interesting given he denied targeting civilian targets before that. So what do you make of this conversation?
As always, we should judge Vladimir Putin by his actions and not his words. His word means nothing. And we knew that long before this latest war in Ukraine. But just look no further than the last 2 weeks where he promised there would be no invasion of Ukraine. And here we are on day 5 of what is a war. This is not a special operation. This is a war against the Ukrainian people.
Now, so far, it appears that this invasion has not gone as Putin planned. So who holds the leverage in negotiations right now?
Well, I think Ukraine has always held the advantage in these negotiations, and they are negotiating from a position of strength. As many people have reported, and I believe it also. I think the Russians underestimated Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian populace resolve and their resilience. And so they're very much at a disadvantage. They are taking losses all over their country. I saw a report today it's almost close to 5,000 dead Russian soldiers, countless destroyed equipment. So I think very clearly that Ukraine has the high ground and in these negotiations. I might also add that Ukraine has the advantage of the entire international community, with the exception of just a couple. But almost the entire international community is speaking with one voice for Russia to stop their offensive operations, stop the war. So that's why I think Ukraine has got the high hand.
But they still do have to face up against that Russian military, which is making its way toward the capital right now. Now, Russia does continue to shell other targets throughout the country, and the Russian Defense Ministry says they've nearly completed the blockade of Mariupol. So do those hold a long-term strategic value, or is this a distraction tactic to try to spread Ukraine's forces to different parts of the country?
No, Mariupol is strategically significant because if you had a map posted right now, you could see that the disputed areas from 2014, Luhansk and Donetsk, and Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula that Russia annexed, that was all Ukrainian territory. And what we're seeing is Russia's military attempting to occupy all of that ground between Crimea and Donetsk so that they've got a land bridge connecting the two. And Mariupol is the centerpiece of that land bridge. So this does have strategic significance, because if they are able to reach a ceasefire, Diane, now it'll be a negotiation as to how far back do the Russian forces need to withdraw. And this will be a point of contention. Russia is not going to want to give up land that they have seized and have occupied. So it has significant strategic impact in my view.
All right, General Robert Abrams, great to have your analysis. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.